942, down at the bottom. The truth is that unfortunately we're going to see that the problems of people imagining that they know better is something which is over here in the Chumash. We get it over and over again. Yeah. So it says like this, down at the bottom, verse number 19. V'niso michorev v'neilech es kol hamidbar hagodol v'hanora hu asher isem derech haray Moriah kasher tziva Hashem Elokeinu isanu. And over the page, v'navoy ad Kadesh Barnea. They came to a place called Kadesh Barnea. V'oymar aleichem. So I said to you, Bosem ad haray Moriah Hashem Elokeinu noisen lanu. We've reached this place that God has given us. Re'ei noson Hashem Elokecha lefonecha es ha'oretz alei reish kasher diba Hashem Elokei avisecho loch al tira va'al techos. Right, very sort of uplifting, very inspiring. That HaKadosh Baruch Hu's given us this land. Go, don't be scared. Everything is going to be okay. It's going to be fine. Did we do that? No, of course not. Right? We don't do things like that. Right? When Moshe tells us that God's telling us to do things, of course we have to have a little critique over here. So verse number 22. V'tikravun elai kulchem v'toimru. So you came to me and you said, Nishlachan Hashem lefanenu v'yachpru lanu es ha'aretz v'yashivu isanu dove es haderech asher na levo ve'es ha'orim asher novo eleim. You came to us and you came to me and you said, let's send spies, we've got to see where we're supposed to go. V'yitav be'enai adovar. It was good in my eyes. What you were asking was good in my eyes. The inference being, says Rashi, be'enai v'loi b'nei amokum. In my eyes, but not in the eyes of God. Which means we seem to have a little bit of a par over here, something of a contradiction between, since when do we ever have Moshe suggesting that something is right if God says that it's not? Right? When do we have Moshe saying that something is not good if God says that it's good? But God doesn't do that.
Okay to go.
Oh, so we have over there, right, in Shlach L'cha, it says over the Shlach L'cha, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, if you want to send, you should send. Right. But you know what that's like? It's like parents saying, you do what you want to do. And then when you do what you want to do, they get upset. That's parental, parental things. They always do things like that, right? So says Rashi like this, Ve'im be'enei Moshe haya toiv, lama omra b'toichos. If it was good in the eyes of Moshe, why on earth is he rebuking them now for what they did? You hear the problem? Which means we all know that the story of the spies didn't turn out right. And they came back and they said things that they shouldn't have said, and in the end the Jewish people were left for 40 years wandering around in the desert in order to let that generation die out. We know that. But when Moshe said to go into, when he said, Toiv be'enai, it's a good idea. So if it's a good idea, why is Moshe rebuking them now? So brings Rashi a very, very interesting moshel over here. Listen carefully. Moshel la'odem she'oimer lechaveiro. Somebody, he wants to bring a little parable over here, right? I'm going to make something that's going to let us understand properly what upset Moshe over here. Somebody comes to his friend and he says, Mecholi chamor chazeh, sell me your donkey. Right? He says, okay, no problem. So then he says, Nois noi ata li l'nisoyon. Will you let me have a test drive? But I guess in our lexicon, right? Somebody comes and says that he wants to buy your Ferrari from you. You know that little red Ferrari you've got outside that says Fiat on the front and is really blue? Yeah, right? So he says, he says, sure, no problem. You want to have a test drive? No problem. Baharim, Lugvois. So he says, not just any old test drive, I'm going to take this donkey up onto the mountains. So he says, no problem, whatever you want.
He doesn't need to test drive it.
Oh, listen, Kavan Shara She'ein Ma'akvoi Klum. When he sees that the fellow's happy for him to take it wherever he wants, he says to himself, but it's got, this donkey is great, this donkey is fine, for sure. I don't have to take it. Where's it gone? He says, here, take your money. I don't have to take it anyway. It's fine. Everything is great.
Moshe was expecting the same thing from the Jews.
Oh, says Rashi, Afani, in the name of Moshe, Afani, hoidesi lidvrechem. You came and you said, here, we want to send spies into the land of Israel, and we want to see where we're supposed to go, and what's strong, and what's weak, and what's good, and what's not. And I said straight away, sure, no problem. Right? Why? Shema tachsaru bechem. In order that you should say, whoa, hold on a second, Moshe, he's got nothing to hide, right? The land of Israel is great. He says we can go in and do whatever we want.
Why would they
Right?
assume that Moshe had something to hide from the beginning?
You know what, the emphasis is like this, right? that not necessarily he's got something to hide, but when they see that he's quite open, you want to send people in? No problem, whatever you want. Then they realize that whatever he's told them is true. That's what Moshe imagines.
So why did they send the spies?
Hold on a second. Hold on.
Because Moshe didn't see the land for himself. That's why.
V'atem lo chazatem bechem. Says Moshe, and you didn't turn back. You just carried on with this idea of having spies.
But the owner of the donkey, he knows the donkey, but Moshe didn't know the land.
Oh, okay, good. So we've got a little problem over here that Moshe Rabbeinu doesn't know the land the way that the donkey owner knows the donkey. But we're talking over here less about the donkey and more about trust. Right? Which means if you come to buy the donkey, you are trusting when this fellow doesn't bat an eyelid. I want to take him up into the mountains, I will take it down into the valleys, I'm going to take it through the water, I'm going to take it for here, I'm take it for there. And this guy's saying, sure, whatever you want. It's not, I've got, everything is fine, whatever you want, right? And the truth of the matter is that Moshe Rabbeinu knows the land of Israel just as good as the donkey owner knows the donkey, even though he's never seen it. Why? Because God told him it's a good land. Which means as far as Moshe is concerned, the fact that God told him it's a good land, then finished, that's it. He doesn't have to ask anything.
But I don't think he was hiding anything. I think Moshe said, the Rebbeinu Shalom gave us this land. Oh, you want to go? Okay, go. He knew he had something to talk him that, don't worry about it, this land is ours to begin with.
That's for sure. But hear what Rashi's saying. Rashi's saying something very strange over here. Rashi's saying, it's almost like, what's it called? Who's going to blink first, right? It's like bluff and double bluff. Moshe says, you want to send spies? Sure, no problem. Why is he saying, sure, there's no problem to send spies? Because he doesn't want to send the spies, right? So he's hoping that the Jewish people will say, wow, this is incredible. Moshe has nothing to hide, therefore we don't have to send spies.
Are you sure that that's what happened? Why wouldn't he let them send spies? He was confident that they would bring back a...
Here, so Rashi, the emphasis is like this. I think that what you're saying is correct, but Rashi is saying, again, we need to try to understand that the psychological dimension over here. That Rashi is saying that Moshe is calling their bluff. Yipshat. It's not that Moshe doesn't have any interest whatsoever in sending anybody. As far as Moshe is concerned, the land is good, God says that it's good, finished. Right. And he doesn't understand why the Jewish people themselves don't understand that either. So they come and they want to make conditions. So Moshe is saying, whatever you want to do, it's just fine. I'm telling you, the land is great. Whatever you want to do, you can do it. In the hope that what? They'll say, oh, listen, you know what? Hold on a second. He's being so amenable over here. I guess he really believes what he says, so we don't have to do it.
No, I think that there are many divisions among the Jewish people who are coming. Some are sheep herders, some are farmers, some are whatever they are. So not every condition will be pleasing to everybody.
Oh.
So they want to find out what's
good
really there for them.
That seems to be their perception, right?
Right.
They want to know what's good, what's strong, what's weak, what's fertile, what's not fertile, where is it good to set up things, where is it good. That all makes sense, right? Rashi's saying that from Moshe's perspective, right, Moshe is saying you can go not because he wants them to go, but because he wants them to see that he has so much complete trust in the fact that the land is good that he's not bothered. You want to go? Go take a look, for sure.
Can I just, the earlier question about they were expecting a good report, right?
Yeah.
The spies actually did have good intent. When they first saw the land, they actually saw that it was good, but they didn't bring a bad report for the sake of
two of them brought
thinking
back a good report.
No, but it's more than that. When they first came back, the first thing they said was, "It's a great land.
Yeah, they said it was a great land.
It's a great land. It's a fertile land. The fruit, it's
gigantic.
fantastic, right?" And then they say the word "ephes," which means "but."
Right.
And then all of a sudden they start talking about the fact that people are dying over there, and then they say, "Take another look at the fruit." You ever saw anything as strange as this? You know, it's like,
And the reason they did that, wasn't it because they were scared of their leadership position?
yeah.
Not because the land they actually felt was
They
dangerous.
thought that the people in the land would be the size of the fruit. They were going to face giants.
Sure. Again, here it's interesting. If you're concerned about the physical dimensions of what you're going to meet when you go in there, so they have every right to be concerned. They really do. But they're just the sin of the Meraglim. What was it really? That they discounted God. They took God out of the equation, which means, it's ridiculous. Like they were told, God took them out of Egypt. God took them through the Red Sea. God gave them the manna. He gave them the water. What do you think? He wants you to go to the land of Israel. He's not going to take you in. That's what you think.
Maybe it was the final test to see if they were...
It was definitely the final test for that generation, which means that that generation has to die out now, because they can't go in. They failed their
But
test.
then there was a group who went in anyways, and then they died.
Who try to go in, right? Why did they die? Here, excellent, right? Why did they die? Because the people in the land of Israel were very mighty, and they were truly warriors. They really were. And if you're going into the land of Israel as a group of soldiers trying to conquer the land of Israel, you're not going to do it.
Right.
The only way that you can conquer the land of Israel is with what? With God on your side. Otherwise, it's not going to happen. And that's, what the emes is like this. That's why the very first thing, when they go into the land of Israel, right, the first time they go in, the first city they come to is Jericho. You're all familiar with the story of Jericho? The story of Jericho is a story that doesn't make any sense. It's not normal. That's not regular warfare, right? That's warfare. That's God. Circling the thing, and each time walls disappearing and shofars and...
That's right, the figure 7 appears quite a few times in our...
Oh, for sure, and especially in Jericho over there, right? For sure, and it all happened on the 7th day, and the Gemara says it happens on Shabbos, right? The 7th day was Shabbos. I mean, it's woo!
And when there's the collar walks around 7
Yeah.
times...
Which is what is the number 7 is what? The number 7 is the number of nature. That God created the 7 days of the week, the creation of the world that we live in. Anything that's a multiple of 7 is something which reflects the natural dimension of the world. What is nature? Nature is the physical world that we live in with HaKadosh Baruch Hu running it. 6 days of the week. We've got a regular 6-day week, and then at the end of the week we have a day which is completely spiritual. And from there, the blessings of the whole week. That's what the sages say. The blessings of the whole week are going to be found from where? From Shabbos. That's where they're going to come from. Makor habracha, right? So we said in L'Chadoidi. The source of all blessing is going to come from the 7th day of the week, which means like this, that if we recognize that the physical world that we live in belongs to God, then that's just great. That's fine, right? We're living in the physical world, and we've got a spiritual shell that goes around it, and everything is going to be great. And that means that you can go into the land of Israel and you can conquer Jericho, even though it's a fortified city, and even though it's full of people, full of warriors. You don't have to worry. Tell me, what did the Jewish people? What did they know about? What did they know about warfare? For goodness sakes, they're a bunch of slaves, right? That came out. They don't know anything about warfare. So it's true they're walking around with arms. But that's about it. And they're going to the land of Israel, and they're going to face off against 7 of the mightiest nations that exist at the time in the area. And they're supposed to be not scared. Where are they supposed to be not scared from?
Moshe would have said to them, no, don't go. So that's one of the things that he had to say.
Yeah, so Moshe feels, right, Moshe feels that he's got no other alternative.
That's, Joshua said, Moshe is so much trustworthy, but he did it out of
Kalev, not Joshua, Kalev. Yeah.
Kalev. He said, you're right, Moshe is not trustworthy, but he did it sarcastically.
He did it in order to get them to be quiet, right? Once he got them quiet, then he could say to them, "Were you kidding? What has Moshe done for us? He's brought us to here. He's given us food. He's given us drink. What are you people scared about?" Right?
the Jewish people said Na'aseh v'nishma before they accepted the Torah without any threat of, I'm assuming without any threats, right? It wasn't, the Har of Sinai wasn't held over to Jews when we said Na'aseh. We said it on our own accord. We put all our trust in Hashem. And over here, for some reason, we seem to forget the whole ordeal.
Yeah.
Why?
I mean, again, there are all different kinds of approaches. One approach is a very interesting approach. So when they lived in the desert, the Jewish people lived in a state of complete and absolute spirituality. You couldn't miss it. You know, they're surrounded by the clouds of glory. They're drinking water that's been given to them by God in the middle of the desert. They've been given food, which is, it's not really food. It's not regular food. Going into the land of Israel means that they're going to go into a much more regular, normative lifestyle.
They'll have to work.
They're going to have to work. They're going to have to work the land. They're going to have to plant. They're going to have to sow. They're going to have to reap. They're going to have to come to Jerusalem, bring all the things to Jerusalem in order to offer them up, right? To turn them into offerings.
But they said Na'aseh v'nishma.
Na'aseh v'nishma is, again, it's difficult maybe to comprehend this from our perspective, but Na'aseh v'nishma was the spiritual dimension, right? We'll take upon ourselves everything that God wants us to do and we'll do it. Going into the land of Israel has a very physical dimension to it, which means they're coming along, they're saying, again, I don't think that it's fair for us to judge in any way. I'm just explaining. Yeah. They're coming along and they're saying, good, okay, we understand that if we stay here in the desert, that God will feed us, and God will give us water, and God will take care of us. We know that. But if we're going to go into the land of Israel and we're going to live normal, regular, physical lives, then we have to find out what the land of Israel is like. Makes sense, no? Sounds like it makes sense.
But either it's their destination anyway. They thought if it wasn't good, they're gonna go to like Jordan or.
No. All they're saying is like this: that if we're going into the land of Israel, then we need to know where the strong points are and where the weak points are, and we're going to see what's good and what's bad, and where's high and where's low.
Where's the fertile land? Where are the minerals?
Where are the falafel balls? Right? That's
where's the shawarma stand?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But you hear, again, speaking from a completely regular physical standpoint, they're right. What did Joshua do before they went in to conquer the city of Jericho? What did he do? He sent in 2 spies.
But it's physical things, but like...
Well, before you make war, you do recon.
For sure, right?
But these are
unless you've got God on your side.
Yeah.
That was the mistake that the Jewish people made.
These are the people who are the voice of Hashem. Like, why would they...
Oh, good. I don't know. I don't have an answer for that. I really don't. That generation is known as the Dor Deah. They were the generation who knew. Yeah. They were the generation that stood at Har Sinai. They heard God speaking to each and every one of them individually. They saw and lived a life that was lamala min hateva. It had no connection to the physical world whatsoever. The whole journey through the desert was something which was lamala min hateva. There was nothing physical about what they were doing. Here, for example, water, food, clouds, right? It says they didn't have to change their clothing the whole time that they were there. It grew together with them. Right, it was kept clean by the clouds. They didn't have to go to the bathroom because the manna that they ate was something, didn't have any kind of extra anything that the body didn't need. It was absorbed entirely. It was a chesed from God, right? There are not too many public toilets in the desert.
Well, they were drinking water. They must have had to urinate.
Oh, so passing water is a lot less complicated, yes. Right? But the idea of having to go to the bathroom and to defecate, that's something which is a lot more complicated, especially when you're millions of people that are traveling through the desert, and God did a great chesed. That the whole thing is not normal. That's not.
But it's all spiritual.
It's all spiritual, right?
No, there's no question about it.
They wouldn't, and that's why they're known as the Dor Deah. They're known as there was no other generation like that. Generation that saw Har Sinai, not just a Har Sinai. Let's go back, right? They've witnessed the 10 plagues. They witnessed the splitting of the Red Sea. They saw everything.
So that's why they had to be killed.
They weren't allowed to go into the land of Israel because after having witnessed all of that...
They could never have adjusted.
Maybe.
They were spoiled.
It's possible. It's interesting. According to one opinion, the reason why the spies came back with the report that they came back with was because they wanted to stay in the desert. They wanted to stay in that bubble and not go into the land of Israel.
Wasn't it like for 40 years, 42 encampments? So there wasn't a whole lot of journeying going on. Wasn't it mostly...
Well, they were one place for 19 years.
Yeah, that's right.
Which means that not only was it 42 encampments over the space of 40 years, but for one place they for nearly half the time they were there, they were in one place.
Listen, they got up in the morning, they had food, they had everything. It was
What did they
complacency.
do?
That nothing.
What's the problem? What's the problem? Here, the Chafetz Chaim says that the Gemara Yerushalmi says like this. There's something called, we've spoken about this in the past, something called Nama de Chesufa. Nama de Chesufa is hated bread. You get something for free on a continual basis. At the end, you're going to end up hating the person who's giving it to you.
That's right. He's taking away your ability to
It's interesting, right? We all would have thought, right, hey, what could be better than that? We'll have somebody look after us, a sugar daddy, right? Yeah. Or maybe for here, a sugar mummy, whatever you want it to be, right? But you get someone's going to take care of you. They're going to pay your bills for you. They're going to buy your clothing for you. They're going to give you food. They're going to take care of everything, right?
Yeah. Is that really what happened?
Yeah.
They started to dislike it?
How could they come and complain about the manna? What were they complaining about? I don't understand. Every morning this stuff turns up. Every morning it gives you whatever you need for that day, right? You don't have to worry anymore about whether you're going to go past the gas station and be able to pick up a Coke from somewhere, right? Or get a hamburger from somewhere, or go past one of those machines that they've got over here that you can put your money in and get nothing out, right? They don't have to worry about a thing. And what do? They come and complain. They complain to Moshe Rabbeinu that this stuff is no good and we don't like it. What do you mean you don't like it?
I thought it was supposed to taste like whatever they want.
Oh, incredible, right? Whatever you wanted it to taste like, except for 5 things. And what do? They come and complain. You know what? Those 5 tastes are the tastes that we want. What were they? One was onions, one was melons, one was I don't remember all of it. Garlic. I don't remember them all, right? But you hip shad. It's unbelievable. Can you imagine you've been given here? I once read a story when I was a kid in school. It stuck with me all these years. That about in a boarding school, and it was a true story. A boarding school in England. The English like to get rid of their kids. I mean, I don't blame them, but so they send them off to boarding school. So one afternoon, the teacher invited his class to come round for afternoon tea. In England, this is a big thing, right? And so they come, and in the middle of the table there is one of these silver semicircular globes, well, half a globe, right? So normally it's there to keep food warm. If you ever been to a fancy restaurant, they come and they pull these things off. They bring out the food, they pull them off at the set, whatever, right? So they sit down and they start their tea, and whatever you get for your standard afternoon tea, cucumber sandwiches and scones and whatever, right? And the teacher gets up and he tells his class, 15-year-old kids. He tells his class, he says, please excuse me for a minute. He says, under here is a surprise. He says, please don't open it whilst I'm away. And when I come back, we'll open it up. And he walks out. And of course, the second he walked out of there, the kids open it up and it was full of feathers. And as they open it up, the feathers go flying everywhere. Now, first of all, you try collecting up feathers. And every time they managed to get a little bit, they put it back underneath, they pulled it up and more feathers went flying out, right? Anyway, the teacher comes back 5 minutes later, feathers everywhere. But what's pshat? That if he hadn't, it's incredible. They had everything there that they could possibly want in this afternoon tea, but because this thing was there and he told them not to open it, what did they do? Opened it. It was a test to see what was going to happen.
It's human nature.
Human nature, right? Because the manna didn't taste of 5 different tastes. How many tastes are there? They're doing research now on the human tongue. The human tongue can identify tens of thousands of different tastes. And you can't have 5 lousy tastes, that's it. Boom, that's what they gotta have. It's unbelievable, right? Why is that? I'll tell you why it is. I'll tell you, it's absolutely clear, I'll tell you. You should know, right? You should know that if you go out and you have to hunt down, go and hunt down to get yourself a dinosaur sandwich, right? So or go out and, whatever it is, you've got to bring food home.
Is there a hector for that?
It depends where you buy it, right? But you've got to go out and you've got to hunt something to bring home for supper, right? So you go out and you hunt and you bring back this animal and you bring home. No one's going to complain about what there is to eat. You earned it, right? It's an interesting thing, right?
There's another point. These people, when they were in Egypt, were hard laborers. Every day they had to work, and they got used to working.
Yeah.
So now they're in the desert and they're not working, and it's all coming. They feel vaguely something's wrong.
Yeah, very possible. Which means like this psychologically, Rabbi said, listen, that's what's Na'amah de Chesufa, that's what it is. It sounds fantastic. Somebody will take care of everything. They'll pay my bills for me. They'll buy my clothing for me. They'll give me my food. They'll give me I don't have to worry about a thing. It's going to be fantastic, right?
I get a little paranoid, wondering what is this.
So the first day or the first week, it's great, right? But how long is it going to take until those little doubts start appearing? And how long is it going to take until the cracks start appearing somewhere, right? And then all of a sudden, at some point, you begin to resent. It's incredible. You begin to resent the person who's giving you all of this. It's interesting. Rabbi Leff told over a story when he was a rabbi before he came to Israel. He's been in Israel for 25 years or something. But he was a rabbi in Miami, and he got a phone call once from a priest. He said there was a lot of interaction between the various clergy in Miami. They helped each other out, gave each other advice. He said he got a phone call from a priest who told him like this. There was a kid, an 18-year-old kid, who was, his mother had died, and his father was very, very wealthy. And after a while, the father started going out, and he found some lady that he wants to get married to. This woman was like, half his age. You can imagine the fellow was very, very, very wealthy. So, I wonder exactly what the attraction was, but whatever, she's half his age. And he wants her to marry him, and she's happy to marry him on one condition though: no children. She's not interested in him having in him having relationships with pre-existing nothing. So this father takes his kid out, his 18-year-old kid, takes him out for supper. It sounds like a teenage dream, right? And he gave his kid 3 things. He gave him a key to a sports car. He gave him a key to a condo, his own condo. And he gave him a credit card with unlimited spending. And he told him, this is all yours. The only condition that comes with all of this is what? We can't have any contact. Within a few months, the kid tried to commit suicide. It sounds like a teenage dream, no? But it's only a teenage dream when you can scream and shout at your parents. Right? Let your parents give you a credit card and a sports car and an apartment and carry on being able to scream at them. That's a teenage dream, right? But when there's no connection, there's nothing there, then it doesn't work. It doesn't work. Something you get for free, right, has very little worth to it. It really does. And in the end, it ends up. And in the end, like I said before, that's what the Gemara is saying, that you end up resenting what you've got. We sit here today and we just cannot understand how could anyone have been resentful of the manna? Whatever taste you want it to be, what came to you, it was nice, it was warm. I mean, what could be better than that? And yet, here, what happened?
I don't understand. Like, what should our reaction be today? Like, to all of this, like the way we reacted and the way.
Our real reaction needs to be is that we weren't there, so it's difficult for us to be able to we can't judge, that's for sure not.
We're not close to God.
We can try to understand, right? We can try to understand, and we can do our best to study what's going on and to see if we can work it out.
I'm not sure there's a saying, I don't know if it's a Jewish saying, like a wise man learns from his mistakes, but a wiser man learns from the mistakes of others. So like, what do we learn from here? Like,
well, one thing we cannot even think about what it was like, because our lives are under our control.
Yeah.
And their lives were not under their control at all.
Maybe the lesson that we can take out of it again, we can't compare, but maybe what we can take out of it is not to take things for granted. You know, it's true that we work for our food, right? And we have to, you know, for us it's a lot simpler to see that how we're living here in this world, and it's as if we're not relying on God, right? But you know, you get up in the morning, if you take a look at the Birkat HaShachar, the brachas that you make in the morning, you know, we say some very basic things over there. We get up and we thank God for having given us our sight. We get up and we thank God for having allowed us to be able to walk properly. I've used this example on many occasions, and I'll carry on to use it in the future as well, because it's very simple and it's very powerful. In a different school that I teach in, one of the girls had an emergency appendicitis in the middle of the year. Baruch Hashem, they took it out just before it exploded, and she was fine. And she got up at the end of the year and she spoke in front of everybody, and she said that, you know, there's a bracha that you make when you come out of the bathroom. Says that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created us with great wisdom, and if any of the holes that are supposed to be open would be closed, and if they were closed and they become open, then we wouldn't be able to survive, right? It's a very simple bracha. It's a very beautiful bracha. It really is. Asher Yotza. Right? So she told everybody, she said, I'm not going to take that bracha for granted ever again. Good. So far, so good, right? But then she turned around to everybody and she said, don't wait for something to go wrong to appreciate what it is that God has given you. Right? Her appreciation of the bracha Asher Yotza, that the body is a very delicate mechanism, she only truly appreciated it after she went through that experience of her appendicitis, and she realized just how much we have to rely on HaKadosh Baruch Hu for everything. And what she was saying was, don't wait for things to go wrong in your body to appreciate what it is that God has given you. And maybe that's the lesson that we're supposed to be taking out of all of this. Don't take things for granted. Appreciate what it is that God has given you, and from that, hopefully, you'll be able to build up a closer and a closer relationship to God. It's hard. I'm not, you know, saying it is a lot easier than doing it, that's for sure. Should we learn? Yeah, we should learn from the mistakes that were made over here in the desert. What are we supposed to learn from this? Again, not to say, you know, if I was there, I would never have done that, because if we would have been there, we would have done exactly the same thing. Right?
Only if we had a similar background.
Beseder, taking everything into account, right? If we were there like they were there. And I'll tell you more than that. Here, maybe you don't like onions. Personally, I love onions, right? But maybe you don't like onions. But I'm telling you, if you would have been in the desert, you would have been complaining that there were no onions in the manna, that you couldn't have a taste of onions. You don't even like onions. That doesn't matter. I want to be able to choose not to have onions. That's who we are. We're very contrary people, right? People are intrinsically selfish. And when something's taken away, that's when we realize that's when we want to have it, right? And that's here, right? So what did Rashi say? Rashi said that he brought the mashal of the donkey, and we're left scratching our heads a little bit and thinking, what's going on? Is this a game of bluff and double bluff? Is this what's going on? That they say they want to do it, and Moshe says, okay, it's okay by me, because he really doesn't want them to do it, right? So if he says it's okay, then they'll realize that it's really okay and they don't have to do it. Yeah? Is that pshat? Because if that's true, then that's not emes, is it? That's not being truthful. So the answer is, the mashal that Rashi brings is very, very exact. The Yitav Be'ena, it says, where's it go? Mashal la'adam sha'omer l'chaver mocholi chamo chazeh. He didn't try to sell them the donkey. He didn't say to him, buy my donkey. What did he say? The other fellow came and said, sell me your donkey. Yipshat. If he comes to me and says, you want to buy my donkey, then for sure you have to take it out, or take it out for a test ride, and take it up into the mountains, and take it down into the valleys and see what's going on over here. But if you've got your eye on the donkey and you come to him and say, sell me your donkey, then the onus is now on who? I don't have to prove anything to you. You want to take it. If you don't want it, don't take it. Moshe Rabbeinu is telling the Jewish people here, you want the land of Israel, take it.
The alternative was go back to...
There is no alternative. The only alternative over here is how to go into the land. How are we going to do this? Right? Here, we've reached our final destination, right? You want to go in, you don't want to go in, so you're stuck. And that's exactly what happened in the end. They weren't allowed to go in because they questioned the ability to be able to go in. So midah keneged midah, measure for measure. What did God do? He wouldn't let them go in.
People like
So here, we spoke about it when we went through Parshat Shlach Lecha. But I'm going to tell it to you again because I think it is something so incredibly fundamental. Here, you mentioned that there were a group of people that decided that they're going in, right? So we would have thought that is, of course, that's the answer, isn't it? The Jewish people weren't enthusiastic enough about going into the land of Israel. So now, what is the answer? The answer is that we're going to get up, we're going to go into the land of Israel, we're going to go and do it, right? And HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, don't do it, and they do it. Moshe says, don't do it, and they do it anyway, and they get killed. But hold on a second. I don't remember the numbers, but it was like a pretty significant figure, right? And what are we left with over here? We're trying to work. Hold on a second, though, but isn't that rectifying the problem? And what we learned back in Parshat Shlach Lecha was that it's not rectifying the problem. The problem was that they didn't listen to God.
It was the wrong shuba.
They did tshuva on the wrong detail, right? They thought they were doing tshuva because they didn't want to go into the land of Israel. No, they wouldn't do it. They were doing tshuva because they were supposed to do tshuva because they didn't listen to God, and they repeated the mistake all over again. So again, maybe that's another thing that we can take out of there is that you're supposed to listen to God. Do what God wants you to do, and not try to get God to do what you want Him to do.
That's right.
We came across that in Parshas Balak with Bilam, right? And Bilam's busy trying to twist God around his fingers and get him to do what he wants him to do, and he ends up, we all know what happens to Bilam at the end, right?
We slew him eventually ourselves.
Ah?
We killed him ourselves eventually.
Yeah, for sure, right? That's it. So I guess the moral of the story is, do what God wants you to do. Here, verse number 28. Ono anachnu oilim achenu emasu es levavenu lemor am gadol v'ram mimenu olim gedolos v'tzois b'shamayim v'gam b'nei anakim ra'inu sham. All this whole thing that they told over there, what they saw. V'oimer aleichem lo yisarutzim v'lo yisirun mehem. So God says to them, you're not going to go in. Hashem Elokeichem ha'olech lifnechem hu yilachem lachem k'chol asher asa itchem b'mitzrayim le'neichem ובמדבר אשר ראיסה, אשר נסחו השם אלוקיך, כאשר יישא איש את בנוי, וכל הדרך אשר הלכתם, בורכם את המקום הזה. You hear what he's saying? It's very simple. Tell me, God didn't take care of you up until now. God took care of you. What are you worried about? You honestly think He can get you out of Egypt, which was the most powerful nation in the world at the time? He can get you out of Egypt, but He can't get you into Israel. That's really what you think. That makes any sense? It doesn't make any sense. So when you look at things rationally and logically, so no, of course it doesn't make any sense, but who looks at things rationally? Who looks at things logically? The minute emotions are put into something, the minute they become a part of the equation, then that's it, you're done, you're finished. Here, Patrick, how many times have you heard me say this vort? Vort from the Stiper, very famous. You know that the rabbis say that when the plague of the frogs, so what happened? There was one enormous frog that jumped out of the Nile, and the Egyptians came and started hitting it, and every time they hit this frog, little frogs came spewing out of its mouth. And they hit and they hit and they hit, and there's millions of frogs all over the place. Says the Stiper, I don't understand. You hit the frog once, and frogs come out. You hit the frog again, frogs come out. You hit the frog again a third time, and you see a pattern unfolding over here?
Pattern with only one iteration, yes.
So says the Stiper, so maybe the answer is what? Maybe don't hit the frog. I'm just suggesting, that's all. I'm not telling you what to do, right? They were very pluralistic in Egypt. But maybe don't hit the frog. So says the Stiper, what on earth possessed them to keep hitting that frog? So explains the Stiper, because they got angry. The minute you get angry, you're not rational anymore, you're not logical anymore, right? We've all done that. Every single one of us does this. You get into a state of frustration and that's it. You just keep doing the same thing over and over again, even though you know that it's the wrong thing to do. And that famous saying from Einstein, that a sign of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting the end result to be different. That's what's going on. They're not being rational. Of course they're not being rational. Because if they were being rational, they would turn around and say, if God wants us to go into the land of Israel, then we're going to go into the land of Israel. We don't have anything to worry about. Because God took us out of Egypt, and God gave us food, and God gave us water, and God protected us, and God gave us His Torah, and God did this, and God did that. So for sure, He'll take us into the land of Israel as well.
When Moshe is saying this, those people are already dead, aren't they?
Yeah. Yeah. Everybody's dead now.
So their sons.
This is all the children and the grandchildren, and he's going over it all over again because he wants to reinforce to them not to make the same mistake again. If you don't believe in God. I mean, that's what it comes down to. No, isn't it ridiculous to talk about a generation that had a direct relationship with God in a way that we can't even begin to comprehend, and yet Moshe Rabbeinu says you don't believe in God. So I once saw the most fantastic moshel, most fantastic parable. There's a fellow who does tightrope walking, and he comes to this little town, and he sets up his tightrope very high up between two mountains over the town. And he tells everybody, tomorrow afternoon at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I'm going to walk across this road. Anybody wants to come, you can come and watch it. The whole town comes out to watch it. And he goes across, with his bar, he walks across this thing, and he gets to the other end. Everybody's clapping and clapping. It's fantastic, right? And then he says, okay, he says, for my next trick, he says, I'm going to go across blindfolded. Do you believe that I can do this? And everyone's shouting, yeah, of course. So he puts on a blindfold and he gets from one side and he starts moving across. He gets to the other side. Everybody's clapping and cheering. This guy's fantastic, right? So he says, okay, for my next trick, I'm going to take a wheelbarrow and I'm going to walk across from one side and blindfolded with the wheelbarrow. Do you think I can do it? And everyone says, yeah, of course you can. And goes and he does it, and everybody's cheering and clapping and cheering. And then he says, okay. He says, for my last trick, I'm going to take a person and put him in the wheelbarrow, and I'm going to go blindfolded across this line from one end to the other. Do you think I can do it? Everyone's going, yeah, of course you can, for sure. And he says, okay, I need a volunteer. And it's complete silence. Complete silence. You believe that he can do it? Of course you believe that he can do it. Are you going to sit in his wheelbarrow? No, for sure you're not. In a certain sense, right, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is saying to the Jewish people, come sit in my wheelbarrow. So before HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, come sit in my wheelbarrow, it's like, of course you can do it. We're with you the whole way, for sure, right? And then HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, okay, we're going into the land of Israel. You ready? And they're like, hold on a second. Well, just 1 minute, 1 minute, 1 minute. Really, we need to know how, what, which, when, why. What is that? I mean, I'm happy to believe in you. I'm just not going to come in the wheelbarrow. That's all. Right? It's interesting. It's a difference between intellectual belief and practical belief, right? I mean, these people, honestly, they don't have any doubts that this fellow can get from one end to the other, pushing somebody in a wheelbarrow, right? They know that he can do that. They've seen him do it without somebody. Why would it be any different with somebody? That's the intellectual belief. The practical dimension is something else altogether. No, I'm not getting in that wheelbarrow. Thank you very much. That's what the Jewish people did.
Let the other guy go, not me.
Yeah. Yeah, I once saw a quote from a very influential Jew in Vienna who said, if you show me somebody who swam the Danube, I'll show you a hero. He says, show me somebody who wants to swim the Danube and I'll show you an idiot. Which means very often the only thing that differentiates between being a fool and being a hero is whether you succeeded at doing something completely ridiculous. Right? Heroism, in a certain way, heroism is something that you do, when your adrenaline takes over and people behave in a heroic fashion. I'm talking about real heroism now. Jumping into a burning building and pulling somebody out, or whatever it is, right? But real, Pinchas, right? Real honest to goodness heroism that has to be, you can't plan it. It has to be done on the spur of the moment, because if you start thinking about it, you've got to say, hold on a second, that's a ridiculous thing to do, isn't it? This building's on fire. Why would I go in there? whatever. I'm not quite sure how we got onto that. But ha'oilech lifneichem b'derech lator lachem makom lechanoischem va'eish laila leroischem b'derech asher telchu bo ve'enon yoimam. You've got God in front of you. He's directing you. You've got the cloud during the day. You've got the fire at night. I mean, you can't miss this, right? Vayishma Hashem es kol divreichem v'yiktzoi v'yishava lemor. And then HaKadosh Baruch Hu got very upset. He got very angry. Im yireh ish b'anashim ha'elu hador ha'razeh. All of a sudden, this generation is now no longer being called the Dor Deh. They're not the generation of knowledge. They're now called the Dor Hara Hazeh. This evil generation. You're not going to see. You're not going to see this beautiful land. Zulasi Kalev ben Yefune, hu yirenu v'lo yitenes ha'aretz asher dorach bo ulevonov, yan Hashem mileh achei Hashem. Kalev, of course, is going to go in because he was one of the goodies, right? But everyone else in that generation is going to be killed out. Gam bi isanaf Hashem biglalchem lemor, gam ata lo yisavoy sham. And I also ended up not being able to go into the land of Israel because of what happened over there by the Meraglim. So if you were thinking, if you were concentrating, you would say, hold on a second, that's not why Moshe got zapped, was it? Why did Moshe get zapped? Why was Moshe not allowed into the land of Israel?
Because he hit the rock.
He hit the rock. When was that? Years later. Why is he coming along and telling them now that because of what happened by the Meraglim, because you weren't allowed to go into the land of Israel, I wasn't allowed to go in as well? So explain the Mefarshim, explain the commentaries, because Moshe Rabbeinu was the leader of that generation. He took them out of Egypt. Which means that he has an incredible responsibility to that generation, which means that he's not going to go into the land of Israel. What about hitting the rock? So in the Medrash it says that the rock was just something used by God to say that Moshe couldn't go in, but he wasn't going to be allowed to go in anyway. Which means according to what the Medrash is saying, if it wasn't the rock, it would have been something else. But Moshe is not allowed into the land of Israel because Moshe belongs together with that generation. That's his generation. And because they messed up with the Meraglim, because they messed up with wanting to go into the land of Israel, Moshe Rabbeinu ends up not being allowed to go into the land of Israel as well. So here, it's the most incredible thing, right? Jewish leadership means taking responsibility for the generation, even when the generation made the mistake and not you. You hear? Moshe could have turned around and said, what do you want from me? It wasn't my fault. I tried to tell them. They didn't listen to me. But he doesn't do that. Why? Because he understands that the actions of the generation are a reflection of the leadership.
Rabbi, I was going to ask why it says became angry because of you. I think you just answered that.
Yeah.
I was also going to say, at the very last minute before they entered the land, when Joshua was given the leadership role, Hashem gave Joshua Nebuah, and Moshe asked, what did he say?
Yeah.
And Joshua said, I cannot tell you.
Yeah.
And that was the moment when Hashem actually allowed Moshe to go to Israel. But when that happened, and Moshe said, and Joshua said, I cannot tell you what Hashem told him. Moshe said, I'd rather die
Right.
now
Toiv
than
misosi.
for 1
Right.
second.
For sure.
That Hashem's speaking to you and not to me.
Which means there's a whole dialogue. With Hashem, when we get close to V'zos HaBracha, when we get towards the end of the Chumash, we'll see this incredible dialogue that takes place, the incredible negotiations that take place between God and Moshe about whether he can go in, whether he can't go in, how he can go in, how he can't go in. It's the most incredible thing, it really is. But his whole desire is to go into the land of Israel to be able to fulfill mitzvahs in the land of Israel. That's what he wants to do. It's Hashem. You know what? Maybe on Sunday we'll talk a little bit about the repercussions of that.
Any Mefarshim or anything that say why didn't God let Moshe to Israel? I mean, we know the hitting the stone, but the reality.
Yeah. Okay. You know what? Here, look. Let's take off one moment. Let's take off one moment. Let's jump ahead. It says that Moshe Rabbeinu pleaded with HaKadosh Baruch Hu to let him go into the land of Israel. It's mamish in Yonah D'Yom. It's very applicable to the days that we find ourselves in right now, the 9 days and the build up to Tisha B'Av. Moshe Rabbeinu pleaded with God to let him to go into the land of Israel, and God kept saying no.
3 times, I think, right?
No. 515 times. Parshas Ve'et Chanan. Ve'et Chanan in Gematria is 515. It says that Moshe prayed 515 different ways to let God let him go into the land of Israel. God kept saying no. In the Medrash it says like this: the final time God says to Moshe Rabbeinu, if you go into the land of Israel, the final temple will have to be built. And when Moshe Rabbeinu hears that, he backs down. That's it. He's not going to go into the land of Israel. Explain the Mefarshim, explain the commentaries like this. The final temple, the third temple, it should be built very, very soon.
Cannot be destroyed.
The third temple cannot be destroyed. It's a temple of eternity. It's something which is going to be an eternal symbol of our relationship with God. Moshe Rabbeinu understands that if somebody of the stature of Moshe Rabbeinu goes into the land of Israel, and Moshe and the land together, they will produce a temple which cannot be destroyed. What's the problem? The problem is that the Jewish people are not on the level of Moshe Rabbeinu. Which means that when the Jewish people go off the tracks and start doing things that they shouldn't be doing, God is going to be left then with only one alternative, which is what? To destroy the Jewish people, because the temple can't be destroyed. When Moshe hears that that's the repercussions of his actions, that's what it's going to mean, then at that point Moshe realizes that it's to the detriment of the Jewish people, to the Jewish nation. He says that he can't do it, he can't go in. And that's one of the reasons it says. On Tisha B'Av, there is a lamentation that we recite which says Mizmor la'Asav. It's a song to Asav. It talks about the destruction of the temple. And the Gemara it says Mizmor la'Asav Salka Daitach. It should say Kina la'Asav. Why does it say a song to Asaf? It should say a lamentation to Asaf. And the Gemara explains, because at the end of the day, on Tisha B'Av, what did HaKadosh Baruch Hu do? He had a choice between destroying the Jewish people and destroying the temple. And in the end, he took out his anger on a building made out of sticks and stones. Inside of the saddest day of the year, there's actually a glimmer of something good. That HaKadosh Baruch Hu chose to take out his anger not on the Jewish people, but to take out his anger rather on the temple instead. If the third temple would have been built then by Moshe Rabbeinu, there would have been no alternative. And that's why Moshe Rabbeinu can't go into the land of Israel, and that's why Moshe Rabbeinu understands and stops asking to go into the land of Israel, but that's not from our Parshat, Mitzvah Hashem. When we get there, we can talk about it again. We're going to stop over here, Mitzvah Hashem.